Hey guys, we're on to our next week. Right now we are working on Chapter 7, Section 1.5. So for this week we are continuing on with coming up with equations and using multipliers by having a fraction or a decimal to help us solve for our answer. So for our first problem, it says the service club is planning on painting apartments. Last year, when only 5/9 or 5 out of the 9 students worked, they painted 12 apartments in one day. If all of the students are available and X represents the number of apartments, represent this situation as an equation. Okay. So right now what we know is that 5/9 of the students could paint 12 apartments. Okay, so our multiplier is going to be our 5/9 times however many apartments equals 12. Okay, so we have our number of apartments, we have our number of students, and we have the amount of apartments that they were able to do in that day, okay? So we need to go ahead and solve this. So last week, what we said was we wanted to get 1x. That was our goal. So now, to get 1x, I need to take 5/9 and multiply that by the reciprocal. So remember, the reciprocal means I'm taking the fraction and I'm flipping it upside down. So on both sides of my equation, okay, I have 5/9 over here and 12 over here. I need to multiply by 9/5. Okay, so that gives me 45/45x equals 108/5. Okay, so that gives me 1x equals, and then I would do 108 divided by 5 is going to be 2, 1, bring 0, it's 21.6. Okay, so our answer would be that they could do 21.6 apartments if they were all there. So if all 9 of the students were there instead of just the 5, they could complete 21.6 apartments in a day. Okay, so this was the idea that we worked on last week. We said, okay, what can we do to solve for that 5/9? Well, we can flip it, make it a whole 1, but we're going to be looking at a different way to do it this week. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this equation and we're going to visualize it using our algebra tiles. Okay, it's going to look a little bit different from what you're used to, so just bear with me and we'll explain it. Okay, so on the one side of the equation, we have 5/9 x. On the other side, we have 12, okay? So, because we don't have a tile that's actually called a 5/9 x tile, I'm going to take my x tile, which is my rectangle, and I'm going to split it into 9 pieces. Let me check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I'm splitting it into that, and I have 5 out of the 9 pieces. So all together, this is x, and this part here is my 5/9. Okay, on this side, I have 12 positive tiles. Okay, So this is how I visualize it like that. Now this doesn't really help me so much because that x tile is split up into a fraction. So what I would want to do is see if we can work it so that I could make my x tiles a whole number. So what I would do is I would actually take this and I would multiply it by the denominator. Okay, so in this case it's 9. So I'm going to do that 5/9 9 times. So I'm going to draw 9 x tiles. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, more. Okay, I have 1, 2. Okay, so I have my 5 out of 9. 1, 2, on each one. And I drew an extra one on that one, but that's okay. All right, so what is going to end up happening, because I have all of these, is we're actually going to be able to fill in some of these spaces up here. So I have 4 spaces up here. I'm going to cancel out 4 of these. Okay, I have 4 more spaces. I'm going to cancel out 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 more spaces. Cancel out 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 more spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 more spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so essentially these guys down here, are gone. Okay, because I did 9 of these from up here, I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 x on this side. Okay, now on the other side, I started with 12. Okay, so I started with that 12. Now, because I took my original on this side and I multiplied it times 9, I have to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, now I am definitely not going to be drawing all of those because that'll take forever. But instead of having 12 of those on the side, I'm going to have that 12 times 9, and I'm going to have 108 tiles on this side total. Okay, so I have 5x on this side, I have 108 on this side. So then it gives us a chance to solve it the way that we used to solve these problems. Okay, so we would have, instead of multiplying it by the reciprocal like we did here, we just multiplied both sides by the denominator, and we end up with 5x equals 108. We divide, and we still get the same answer we had before, which was that 21.6. Okay, so we're getting the same answer either way, except in this case, we're not multiplying by another fraction. We're just multiplying both sides by the denominator that's with our x, and we're getting our answer that way. Okay, so it's the same idea. It's just a different way to approach it. Okay, one way is not necessarily easier than another way, although some people prefer to do this way. If you are one of those people, then by all means, this is a good strategy. Okay, so then it says, can we use this strategy of making wholes to help us solve other equations? Definitely. Okay, so we have this problem here. 4/7 x equals 8. So how many sets of 4/7 x would make a whole? Well, like I said, in this last one, we had 5/9, so we made 9 sets. In this one, we have 4/7, so to make it a whole, we have 7 sets. We need to multiply by 7. So over here, we have 4/7x, and this side we have 8. We're going to multiply both sides by 7. Okay, that cancels this out, because imagine this was a 7 whole. Okay, so I have 4x equals 56. Okay, so then I'm going to do that and do that. And then I have 1x equals 56 divided by 4. Goes in once. Goes in 4 times 14. Okay, so we follow it, solving the equation the same way. It's just instead of multiplying by both sides by 7/4, we're just multiplying both sides by 7 and then dividing by 4. Again, it is the exact same thing as what we were working on last week. It's just approached a little bit differently. Okay, now what about if we have a decimal? So in this one, we have 0.3 or 3/10 x equals 4.26. Now we had a fraction with our x in the last one, and we multiplied that by the denominator. So in this case, we need to think about that 0.3 as what would the denominator be? Well, we call this 0.3, we call that 3/10, which gives us our denominator. Okay, so is there a number we can multiply by to get a whole x? And that answer is 10. Okay, now if I had a decimal that was 0.32, for example, that is now hundredths. My denominator would be 100, and that's what I would multiply by. Okay, but in this case, we just have one decimal place, so we are going to multiply it times 10. Okay, so we have 0.3x equals 4.26. I'm going to multiply this side by 10. I'm going to multiply this side by 10 because I have to do the same thing to both sides of the equation. I now have 3x, and I multiply this side by 10. That moves that decimal place over once, so I have 42.6. Now I divide by 3, and I get x equals, I do 42.6 divided by 3. 3 goes in once, goes in 4 times, goes in twice. 14.2. Okay, so the decimal is the exact same thing. You just have to think about how would I say this decimal the correct way. The correct way is 3/10. That gives me my denominator, and that's what you would multiply both sides by. Okay, I'm hoping that was helpful for you guys. Remember to make sure you ask questions if you need help. Email me, request a Zoom meeting. I'm more than happy to do some one-on-one. I will send out when I'm going to be doing them this week as well. Do make sure that you contact me or Miss Heuser if you have any questions.